Hi, my name's David.
And I'm John.
And we're the Debt-Free Guys. And this is Queer Money, the only show that's talking about LGBT personal finance. We believe that all of us are dreamers, and this show is to help make those dreams come true. We also believe that there needs to be a voice in the personal finance space that speaks for and with our community, and that's why we're here.
Today we're going to talk about how to have a fabulous wedding without having to ruin it before your marriage before it even starts. The motivation for this show is embarrassingly, David and I just finished watching the series Friends recently, and on that show they had Monica and Chandler were discussing having their wedding, and Monica said to Chandler, "We can always spend your life savings and earn more money. We can't have another wedding." So David and I thought that was kind of goofy and foolish, and we thought, well, let's bring this into the LGBT realm and see how that topic affects us. Today's show is brought to us by HIV Smart. HIV Smart is dispelling the myths surrounding HIV, so we thank them for their sponsorship, and we ask you to please visit their website at hiv.org.
HIVsmart.org.
HIVsmart.org, sorry.
That's okay. So again, Blab, or this Queer Money show, is an open discussion. We encourage and love it when you participate. For those individuals who are watching, you can participate by adding comments on the right-hand side. Remember to type the /Q, and then your question, if you want to ask a question, that will show up for the rest of us to see. So let's go ahead and meet our guests.
So we will let each of our guests introduce themselves. Since Amiee is the minority here, we'll let her introduce herself first. But she has an honorary gay card, so it's cool to have her.
I worked hard for that too.
Right.
My name is Amiee Palifroni, and I am the owner of Prisma Events, which is a wedding and event planning company located here in Denver, and I specialize in LGBT events.
Awesome. Great. Glad to have you. Jessica, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Jessica, and I am a Jill of all trades. I write, I do social media, I tutor, I teach, and I am married to my partner, and we got married in 2014.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, Matt, do you want to introduce ourselves or yourself?
Matt Carriglitto, and I am a CPA at a firm in Denver, a partner in that firm, and do taxes and audits and reviews and all that kind of accounting stuff. That's boring.
Well, Matt's done a great job. We've never been audited, so far he's working out. He's our accountant. Full disclosure.
Yeah. And my husband and I, we got married in October last year, and I can tell you how to have an offensive wedding.
And that was your second wedding to him, right?
Yes. Yeah, we had a commitment ceremony, I guess you'd call it, about 14 and a half years ago. And then when it became legal nationally, we decided to do it again. So.
Very cool. Yeah, we had the honor of being there. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The open bar was great. So to go ahead and get the conversation kicked off, let's ask everybody, what does the perfect wedding mean to you? All of you are married, and two of you recently married. So what, in hindsight and in foresight even, what do you think the perfect wedding means? Jessica, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So the perfect wedding for me is really about bringing in my partner and myself and making the wedding our own, which is something that we did. And we did a lot of like traditions, but that were important to us. As Jews, we wanted to bring in a lot of traditions that may not necessarily have been traditional for other queer Jews, but were important to us. And at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we, stayed in budget and that we could be with all of our friends and family and celebrate. And at the time that we got married, we got married in LA because that was the only place where we could go that was legal for, like, my family's from Atlanta and my partner's family is from LA. So we got married in LA, and it was just like, I don't know, the perfect wedding was just having everything work out just the way that we had hoped it would. I guess.
Nice. Does that include the budget as well?
Yes, yes. Actually, I mean, we were actually went a little bit over budget, but it worked out because there were things that we weren't sure that we were going to splurge on, and it was really good that we did.
Yeah. How did you make the decision of what not to splurge on and what to splurge on?
Well, we at first weren't going to do like a videographer, and we decided that was something actually really important, and also having a DJ, which was something we were like, oh no, we'll just like have someone, put an iPod in or something. But it was actually really good that we got one because it just kind of like made the whole party and like really helped in that sense. But we did know that there were certain things that we were adamant that we were going to spend on, and I was like a photographer and like the catering, and so that was like we knew that those were the things that were probably going to cost the most, and that we were absolutely sure that we were going to have.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Yeah. So Matt, we'll follow up with you since you just disclosed that you had a very expensive wedding. Can you hear us?
Hi, guys.
Oh, we got you.
Oh, we can hear you.
So technology failed. We're firing Comcast tonight. We had to log in through my phone.
Oh.
Oh, okay. Well, we can see you and hear you.
Sorry
So
about all that. So I don't know, Matt, did you get a chance to share your story?
Yeah, so I shared mine, and then Amiee was talking on her end, and
Awesome.
we were kind of describing what we all think is the best, what makes a perfect wedding. And that, one thing that somebody told me that I really liked and that it really meant a lot to me, and I took it to heart and did it. They said, think of two things that you really want, that you want at your wedding, and do those two things.
Right.
And so for me, I really wanted to we had this guitar player that we just loved from Key West, and I really wanted to bring him up, and I wasn't going to do it because it was going to be expensive. And in the end, we did fly him up and pay for his weekend here, but it was awesome to do that. So I found that to be very important to, find something that you want and do it. Because a part of the wedding, you are doing things for other people.
Right. Well, I think that's some of the problem too, is that very often we feel like we have to live up to everybody else's standards, especially maybe our parents and our dad's co-workers, and so that's where it can be very expensive.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll go into the next question. Any tricks, and maybe Amiee, this is a better question for you to answer since you're an event planner. What are some of the tricks to having a perfect wedding that won't help you, that won't hurt you financially? What are some of the ways to keep those costs down but still have a great day?
I think doing your research is a big part of it. Really looking at, what can we afford? What's most important to us? Making a list of priorities. What are your must-haves? Kind of what Matt was saying. What are the two things that you want the most? And making that list of priorities and knowing, we definitely want a high-end photographer. So we need to be able to put, X amount of our budget to that. Or we definitely want to have an open bar. That's really important to us and our guests to give everybody a good day. So prioritizing, I think, is a big piece of it. I like to tell people to think outside the box. I am a little bit different type of wedding planner. I'm very hands-on. Most planners, I would say, and it's because I don't take on as many clients as well, but I like to do things. I like to make stuff, and that's one of the ways that I help my clients stay within their budget and keep their costs down, because I am the planner that will put bows on stuff for you and, make your boutonnieres so you don't have to spend, $25 a piece on a flower that A, they're only going to wear for a couple hours, and B, is probably going to get mushed halfway through the night too. So, I've had several events where I've made boutonnieres that can be used as a keepsake. So one way to kind of stretch your money a little bit further. Budget, from the get-go is one of the most important pieces. You can't go anywhere if you don't know how much money you can spend. And people will have, a sliding scale sometimes. But kind of what Matt was touching on too, when he was talking about his wedding, is that this is the first thing I tell my clients. The best way to cut your budget and stay within your budget is to cut your guest list. Because you're paying for every single one of those people. So if it's not somebody that you're going to die if they're not at your wedding to celebrate with you, they can probably, be moved to your B list. So I tell people, sit down, make an A list and a B list, and do that independently of each other. Include your parents in that if they're involved in your wedding. Have them make their list too. If somebody is on all 4 lists, they're definitely coming. They're on the A list. Then once you kind of figure out, okay, this is what we can afford, this is how many guests we can accommodate, then you might be able to go back to that B list and say, okay, now we can definitely invite this person and get them included as well.
It was interesting. Huffington Post had an article where, in 2013 that said 28% of gay marriages, same-sex marriages, will have 100 or fewer people. Relative to, I don't know the last time I've been to a straight wedding that's had that few people, but I thought that was pretty interesting. Advocate also recently pointed out in 2014 that same-sex couples spend on average $16,000 on weddings, which is $14,000 less than what straight couples on average spend.
Yeah. Which I totally understand that. I mean, if you go to a straight wedding there, it's supposed to be like, depending on the family, it can be very traditional, which is like you have 300 people and you have a 3-course meal and an open bar and a live band and this, and it's like those were things that we never considered having all of that. I mean, we had a sit down dinner and but like there's certain things that I was like, or flowers also, like we had no flowers. Like there were 0 flowers at the wedding because I was very adamant about I don't want flowers. But that's another thing. It's very traditional to have lots of flowers. And I was like, we're not doing that. I don't have to if I don't want, if I don't want to.
Do you think that the fact that you're already having a non-traditional wedding kind of bodes in your favor because you can just sort of do everything differently?
I think so.
Yeah.
But it also, it totally depends on the family. Like for us, both sets of our parents were like, whatever you want to do is fine. Do what you want. But I'm sure that for some of our friends, it's like very much the parents, I don't know, they might be more involved or want to do more. So I guess it also depends on the situation. I don't know.
Yeah. Matt, was that your same experience?
Yeah, I think, it was a little bit easier. We did want it to be different and fun. I mean, we really wanted it to be this big event. Yeah. And, if I can go back and look at things that we did or we could have saved on, like Jessica said, flowers. Flowers are a very expensive part of the wedding. We were fortunate that Joe's sister works in Vegas for one of the big hotels and does all their ordering for the flowers. So she was able to get it to us at a nice discount, but we had lots of flowers. So we went the opposite way. But it was interesting because I went to my niece's wedding about a month before, and that was really helpful in a way because it was a pretty good sized wedding. She had over 200 people, and it was in a big tent outside in a farm, and full sit down dinner, and like the 16-piece band, and it was nice. But it was nice to look. I would almost tell somebody, if you're going to get married, go to a wedding about 2 months before you get married, and just check it out, just look because you're thinking about all these things. And like at hers, I realized the one thing, because we helped her set up the whole tent the morning of, set all the tables, do all the flowers, do all the decorations. And then we all came in there and sat down, and I realized you can't see the flowers anymore. So once the venue's full, all the flowers that you have on the table weren't there. So we focused more on putting stuff up in the air, actually, at Quandary where we had ours, because we had, the sunflower kissing balls, and all that stuff. So, yeah, so I would say flowers is one place you could definitely save money, and the decorations in general. You can spend a lot on decorations.
Yeah.
And once everybody's in that room and it's full, nobody can see them anyway.
Right.
So there was an article on yourtango.com, and it's the most frequented, the most common regret all seem to relate to alcohol. Either the bride and groom drinking too much, having an open bar, an uncle drinking too much, and they said so it was very embarrassing on one end, and it was also very expensive on the other. So Amiee, would you agree that? Would you think that that's true?
Bar is the hardest part of putting together any type of event, whether it be wedding or another social event or corporate, because it truly depends on your group. I know if I didn't have an open bar, probably a lot of my friends wouldn't even come.
Well, maybe they should be on the D list.
Yeah. It's one of those things that's very hard to anticipate, and there's 100 different ways to set it up. So that's something that I definitely spend some time walking through with my clients. Do you have a lot of heavy drinkers? Are you worried about people over drinking? Do we need to plan for transportation? You can do just beer and wine if people get a little rowdy on cocktails. There are ways to kind of deter some of that, but it is definitely the diciest part of trying to plan an event.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember hearing something recently that the average wedding in New York City costs $75,000.
I believe that.
It's interesting because one of the things that I've heard that families are starting to do there is that they have found that having a destination wedding is so much cheaper because they can go to venues that are less expensive, go to cities where the costs are less expensive. And in some cases they pay for their guests to get there because it still makes it cheaper.
Wow.
And there's so many different things that you can look at, what areas can you cut? One of the other things I heard recently, watched something online, was to think about when and where. Because when you have a wedding, and Amiee, you probably can confirm this, I think June and December are the most popular months for weddings. So that's what...
Yeah, not December for Colorado. Probably in other places. If you want to talk, Colorado specific, May through September is really our prime time wedding season. But Colorado itself has become a very large destination wedding location. More so in the mountain areas, not so much people coming to Denver, but really going to the mountains. And, if you're looking at, a Vail mountain wedding, you are going to be comparable to a New York City wedding if you're looking somewhere there. But I actually saw an article just today through an industry magazine that I subscribe to, talking specifically about LGBT weddings and how destinations are on the rise. So places like Europe are becoming very popular for the LGBT community. South Africa, even places in Mexico, which is, kind of a staple of destination weddings. But as more and more places start opening up just to the community itself, I think people are looking to, continue kind of thinking outside the box and being a little less traditional in their weddings and, maybe taking the destination out.
Why do you think, now that it's legal to get married in the U.S., why do you think the LGBT community, or I guess gays and lesbians, are going overseas to get married?
I think it still falls into that non-traditional factor that, and this is something that I have been seeing a lot recently, and I think it expands farther than the LGBT community, but it definitely hits home, is that couples are waiting longer in life to get married. So, even up to 10, 15 years ago, we still saw a lot of couples who were in their early 20s getting married, which means mom and dad are mostly footing the bill. I think now that we have our baby boomer generation, their kids are getting married now. We have a huge divorce rate, unfortunately, in the U.S. And I think all those things fit together to see this shift that we've seen where couples are now waiting into their 30s to get married, sometimes even into their 40s. And I think that's because most of them are paying for their own weddings. Definitely seeing that in the LGBT community, where you might not have the support of your family to help pay for a wedding. So they're definitely paying for their own weddings. So something like a destination wedding, if you can go to Mexico and go down to an all-inclusive and get some cheap flights to include, to send your guests, that's a very viable option now.
So Jessica, that makes me want to ask you, since it seems like half of your wedding was destination and the other half was not destination, how difficult was it for people to travel to your wedding?
It was surprisingly easy, I think, actually, because it was in a major city. We weren't going to, I don't know, like some random place far from an airport. We went into LAX, and you're pretty much everything that we were doing in the weekend was within 2 blocks of each other. So you didn't have to have a car. If you were staying at the hotel that we had booked rooms at, it was literally 2 blocks from the synagogue where we had both the ceremony and the reception. And I think making it easy it was mainly my family that was coming from the East Coast, because all of my family's on the East Coast. And that really helped. And of course, not everybody could come. From my side, I only had a couple of friends come, one from Atlanta and one from the San Francisco area. But my partner had, a lot more friends who were able to come. I think our families were about even. And I think a lot, because my family, they just wouldn't miss it. The ones that could come, they just wouldn't miss it. My family loves weddings. They love weddings. So, the ones that could afford it, it was, it was something that they would never be like, oh, well, I can't go. It's, across country. We flew out my grandmother from Florida, but we didn't fly out my other grandmother from Baltimore because we didn't think she'd be able to make the trip as well. But, having a destination wedding for half of our guests didn't seem to be that big of a problem. And of course, it would have been lovely if we had more friends from Israel, because we invited a lot of people, but from, our friends from Israel, but we knew realistically that just wasn't going to happen. And so it actually also helped with us to cut down, or I guess have a fewer number of people than we expected at the wedding because it was destination, since our destination, I guess, for a lot of our friends. So that helped.
Gotcha. So I guess in general, do you think couples put themselves at risk financially planning or having their wedding? Do you think they kind of throw money out the door in hindsight, since you're all experienced this? Matt?
Yeah, probably. I know my niece, they went over their budget. I don't know if you're throwing it out the door. I think you could work at making it less expensive. And I think, Amy's point, that's a great idea to have your A list and B list. And I keep going back to that for us. Ours was so big because we just didn't have a list until it was too late. And
for David and I on.
And I think it's probably just important to get a list, get a budget, and try to stick to it.
Right.
And it's not going to be cheap. If you're going to invite 100, 200, 300 people to a party, it's going to be pricey. But, but I think, like Amiee said, there are people, does this person really need to be there?
Right.
And is it a current friend or a life friend?
Right.
I think is an important part of it too. And that, and that can really keep the cost down as well. Because obviously the number of people is what's going to drive the cost for a good portion of it,
Right.
And in our case, once we did the demographics, so how many people were there, and then we knew we were over the capacity of the restaurant, we had to tent the patio, that was about 20% of our cost was tenting that patio. It's very expensive to do that.
Right.
And then all the tables and everything. So, but I don't, you're at risk. A wedding, if you don't plan for the wedding, it can be very expensive.
Yeah.
So
shotgun weddings have their advantage, I guess, sometimes, because you have a short time period to do it. You do it quickly, and you oftentimes can't spend the time adding or inviting a whole bunch of guests. So.
Yeah, we're on a group on Facebook, a FinCon community of personal finance bloggers, and when we asked the general group, what are some of the ways to keep wedding costs down, the most popular comment was to elope.
Yeah.
Everybody elope.
I mean, we have friends now too. We went to one in Mexico, a few years ago, and we're going to one in May, and actually we're going to make that our honeymoon afterwards. And we're going to go to Hawaii. But for them to do that, it is much less expensive to do the wedding down there, because you're basically, just paying for the food and the location for for the night is all.
We were lucky that so we had told people, even though we had to register because out of pressure, we really had told people that we don't want any physical gifts. We wanted to do it as, quote, Israeli style, where you go to a wedding in Israel and there's a box with a padlock on it, and you put in 250 shekel at the minimum, which is $50 or something, maybe a little bit more than that, to cover the cost of the wedding, essentially, to pay your way as a guest. And nice. We were lucky to about break even with what we spent and what we received, even though, we also had to register, and there were tons of things. It was just kind of interesting. But that's another thing that, couples can do, is say, to not register, especially if a couple has been together for a long time. We were still traveling and moving, and we didn't really have a set place yet. But for couples that have been together for years and have their house and whatever, you don't need to register. You can say I forget how we were looking at wordings of how to do it on our website. And it was essentially we're doing it Israeli style. Please, we prefer, I don't know how I said it, but we prefer checks, it's that easy.
We have friends who have gotten married, and they have rooms full of wedding presents that they have never used. A friend of ours, she got married and literally has almost a second kitchen full of stuff that doesn't hardly ever get used. And you think about all those gifts, and they could be used to that advantage. If individuals would have given money. The other thing I've kind of noticed, and I did get an invite to this recently, was someone has created a website that really is kind of like a GoFundMe website specifically for weddings, that allows friends and family to, instead of giving you a gift, they do contribute to something specific for the wedding. So, one of the examples was that if you would like to give $100 towards flowers, so you really, like you mentioned, it really is kind of a way of paying your way to the wedding, allows the wedding to be an enjoyable event, and then maybe you're not wasting on another crock pot that they don't need.
Yeah, and one thing that was actually really helpful, even though we registered, even though we didn't really want to, it helped us to be able to return things if we got double, or we were traveling. Like we didn't know we were going, and we were able to like return certain things that were going to be very difficult to travel across state lines.
Right.
You know, like you have a toaster that's huge. Like I can't fit that in my car, you know,
Right.
or let alone an airplane. We didn't have a car at that point. We were flying from one place to the next where we were moving, and it made it super easy to return things. And then if we wanted to rebuy them within 6 months after the wedding, we registered at Macy's. You could get a big discount on anything that was on your list, on your registry. So that's another thing that if people decide that if they want to make it easy for returns or something like that, register. But you could also just say no gifts, no like physical gifts, like checks, please.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a growing trend that I've been seeing too, that, you know, again, kind of going back to people waiting a little bit later in life to get married. And a lot of, you know, probably 90% of the time at this point, you've lived with your partner for a while. So you don't really need a lot of stuff. The other side of that coin is that people want to give you things when you get married. So one of the things, you know, kind of what Jessica mentioned, a little kind of cheat, if you will, that I tell my clients a lot of times is register for, you know, a few things, because people do want to give you gifts. They, you know, that's a traditional piece of things that people really enjoy. But register for some big ticket items. And, you know, not expecting that anybody's going to buy you a new sofa, but at the end of it, you're going to get 10% off of anything that's left on your registry. Same thing goes for baby showers. So this is a great way to save a little money on the back end. You know, register for a couple things that people can essentially purchase, and then put some of those big ticket items that you've been wanting on your registry, so that at the end you can go get them at a discount.
Is that for all websites that do registry? Or?
Most stores will do that. I know Target does, Macy's does, Bed Bath & Beyond. They're going to give you a discount on anything that's left on the registry after the event. Another big trend that I've been seeing as far as, you know, registries go and kind of not wanting to waste money or waste gifts and things. There's actually a Denver-based company called Vebo, VEBO.com, and it's experience-based registry. So they've partnered with different companies, just, you know, across Colorado. I think they're planning to expand, you know, maybe to other countries and across the US. But basically, you can register for a backpacking trip, for you know, kayaking, you know, hiking, camping, you know, things like that. These experience-based opportunities for you to go and experience as a couple after your wedding, or whenever you want to do that. But I think when we get to a certain point, if we've lived together for a while, you don't need another crock pot. You don't need another set of towels or dishes. And it's really about experiences. And now that you're a married couple, you want to start having those experiences together.
It's interesting you say that, because our post tomorrow is about being experienced people versus things people. And we know that various times in your life, you go back and forth on that scale of wanting things versus experiences. And you're right, especially for John and I, the more our relationship has matured, the more we like spending time together. And that's where we put our money in, our traveling, enjoying time together, rather than buying another new thing.
But we do need a new crock pot.
We actually do need a...
Well, you can register for one, and then...
So our last question, what any recommendations that you have for people who are watching to have is it possible to have a wedding for $3,000 to $5,000? And if so, any pointers on how to do that?
I think yes. We were considering like, okay, how can we be cheaper or whatever, or just when we were wedding planning, I found a website called Intimate Weddings. I think it's .com maybe, and they have a whole section about budget weddings and weddings under 10,000, weddings under 5,000, and nice. People are so creative. Like I'm not that creative, and so I was like, wow, like and they're not all elopements. It's like, you know, if you have 20 of your closest family members, you can still do it in under $5,000 or whatever. So I would recommend checking out intimate weddings, because I just enjoy watching, even though we did not have an intimate wedding with 20 people. But nor did we, you know, spend $5,000 on it, but it was, I thought it was just really inspiring.
Nice.
Yeah. Amy, any recommendations from you?
Yeah, first thing, guest list. It's a lot easier to plan a party for 20 people than 200 people. So, to the effect that Jessica was just mentioning, guest list is going to be first. I think there's a lot of ways that you can cut costs in a simple way that are still going to work just as efficiently. I've been steering a lot of my guests to do online invitations. Unless a paper traditional invitation is something that you have your heart set on, you know, keeping in a box for the rest of your life, then everybody's got the internet, everybody's got an email address. So there are a lot of really great options out there for online save the dates and invitations. Paperless Post is one of them. They do a beautiful job. A lot of them are free. You can also pay a couple dollars and get something a little bit nicer. Makes it really easy to track everything as well, because it's already online for you. Going places that are all inclusive. And by that, I mean, people have it in their heads that, oh, if I get married at my house or my parents' house or in my backyard or at a park, it's going to be way cheaper than, you know, going to a venue or a hotel. It's not going to be, because at that point you're adding in a lot of extra rentals, extra labor, extra staff that you really didn't account for. You didn't think about, you know, if I have it at my house, now I have to rent 100 chairs. I have to rent a tent. I have to get heaters, you know, all these additional pieces. Whereas if you're going to a restaurant or a hotel where all those additional pieces are included, that's that all-inclusive that's going to make your money stretch farther. Someplace like a hotel, they're going to provide all the tables, chairs, linens, napkins, dinnerware. The catering is going to be on site. The alcohol is going to be on site. Staff is not an extra charge. So kind of looking at it as an all-inclusive piece, how much bang for my buck can I get with one stop is going to make your money go a lot farther.
Question. Are there all-inclusives in the U.S.? I've never looked that up. I guess there would be, huh?
As far as like a destination, like a resort, like if you're thinking of like going to Mexico all-inclusive, I don't know. I'm sure there are some out there. If you're looking to stay local, any hotel or restaurant with a large private dining space is going to include all those pieces for you. So you're not going to be looking at renting additional pieces, you know, unless you want them. You know, people come into my hotel and say, I hate those chairs. I need chair covers. You can absolutely have chair covers. They're going to run you $3 a piece.
Interesting.
You know, times 150 chairs will add up very quickly.
Very cool.
Another piece, kind of like I mentioned, you know, the DIY stuff. I've done flowers for several of the weddings that I've planned. I mentioned the boutonnieres, you know, things like that, place cards, invitations. There is an amazing amount of opportunity to find those things way cheaper for you to make them on your own. Pinterest is a love-hate relationship in the world of wedding planners. It's awesome that it gives you so many ideas and really kind of helps you hone in your vision, but none of those pictures come with a price tag. So I've had clients that are showing me pictures of $100,000 weddings that they had no idea that that's how much it costs. So it's great to use it for ideas for things that you can make and cut your budget, but be careful what you're looking at on there.
We did a lot of stuff like DIY, and our table, or what are they called, the centerpieces, were things that we bought these mirrors at the 99-cent store. Like literally we bought like, I don't know, 20 mirrors, or no, it must have been more than that, at the dollar store. And then candles and little candle holders from IKEA. And it was like super cheap. Whereas if we had done whatever the synagogue was going to do, or even our caterer, would probably be like so expensive. So totally, there's so many things. And you know, the dollar store is amazing, but make sure you're going to an actual dollar store and not like Family Dollar, which is not a true dollar store.
No dollar store.
Another great place to check is Craigslist. You type in weddings on the for sale section in Craigslist, and you would be, I mean, you can basically decorate your entire wedding off of Craigslist from other people who's paid full price for those mirrors, for those table runners, for those chair covers, and now they've got 100 of them that they're never going to use again, and they want to get rid of them. So Craigslist is another great place to go and search and see, you know, what does somebody else have that they paid full price for that I want or I need.
Also, that goes back to your point of making sure you do all the research. You know, look high and low for however you can save money. Matt, any recommendations for you to from you to have a $3,000 to $5,000 wedding, or what not to do?
Not for me. You know, I don't know. I think a lot of that, you know, again, it goes back to just is planning. You're going to have to plan if you want to have a $3,000 to $5,000 wedding. You're going to have to, you know, organize it, plan it, and say no a lot. And, you know, but there are a lot of sites out there, you know, like Amiee was saying, you know, Craigslist is good. There's actually, I joined more websites than I ever thought I would. Pinterest, and I forget all. There's bridalgaragesale.com is out there. So, you know, and you can get a lot of cheap things. We have all our decorations, and they're just in storage right now, but in the spring, we're going to try to sell it off because it was a lot of money. And, you know, can all be reused again. The little sunflower balls that we had hanging from the ceilings are about $40. So, yeah, but I can resell all that, you know, I think. So, yeah, I mean, so if you want to do a wedding under 5,000, it'll take some.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that a friend of mine did, my best friend actually, what she did to help cut the costs on her wedding is she knew that there were certain things that she wanted and she did not want to give up. So she decided to tier her wedding. She had this ceremony early in the day in a location that didn't cost a lot, didn't have a minister there. It was actually a friend who went online and got registered to be an officiant at the wedding. I think that there was 30 people at the wedding, and it was early in the day. Then they had a brunch for that same group of people. And then at 6 o'clock at night, there was a large reception. And at that large reception, it was just basically finger food and the cake and the alcohol. And she said that helped everyone feel included because it was her very, very close friends and family who attended the actual ceremony. But then everybody else who was there later on at the reception was able to still be a part of her special day. And that's what she really liked, was having that much larger group there. But she said had she done that same event for that large group of people, she know that her wedding would have cost 3-4 times as much than what they paid for it.
So
I looked at quite a bit. I debated over cash bar and not cash bar, and I know that's you know, that can add a lot to it. So we set a limit on ours, and then we were fortunate that the place that we had it at, they, you know, it's our hangout already, and so they let us get out the wine at their cost. So our wine was very inexpensive. We had some kegs here donated by a brewmaster here in town, so that helped us. But you know, a cash bar is or an open bar, I mean, is a decision that you have to make. And if you have an open bar, that's going to raise your cost a lot.
Well, maybe one of the things that you could do is have an open bar up until, you know, after dinner starts. And then at that point, people can, you know, buy whatever they want to go drinking with.
Right.
You know, have some control.
We did ours. yeah, we just set a limit at it, like $2,500, and just stopped it at that point.
Gotcha.
Well, geez, we drank that much.
But it's interesting because I talked to to some people about it beforehand, and it was definitely kind of a touchy spot with people, is if you have an open bar or not. And some people think you need to, because ours was kind of a destination wedding because of where we live. Even though we got married where we live, everybody else had to come here. And, so some people, in their opinion, told us that, if I'm traveling all the way out there, then you should buy me a drink. So
Jeez.
I don't know.
That's pretty strong.
Yeah. Well, that it's interesting you say that, because that's tradition, really, isn't it? I mean, that's tradition saying that you as a couple or as your families, you are required to spend a lot of money because I'm coming to your wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we need to break those kinds of traditions. Maybe the traditions really should be let's get back to experiences and not things.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so cool. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. We want to thank all of our guests. We especially want to thank HIV Smart. Please definitely visit their website at hivsmart.org. Please also subscribe to the Queer Money Lifestyle newsletter, which you can subscribe to at debtfreeguys.com. And then don't forget to join us next week for another Queer Money episode, where by then we will have a new internet company, and where we'll discuss whether or not it's wise to come out at work. So thank you, all of our guests, and thank you, all of our watchers. We appreciate it.
Yeah. And on the replay of this will be posted on our site on Thursday. We did reference a lot of resources. I normally would have put those resources in the comments. So if you would like to get a hold of those resources, and we'll go back and add some of the ones that you three have talked about as well. And actually, Jessica, I'd love to put your I think it was HuffPost article.
Yeah, HuffPost. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll get that up on our website as well. We'll put a whole list of show notes. And we have a list of 16 things that you can do to help cut the costs of your wedding. So we'll get all that out there. Just give us a couple of days and we'll get this posted.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
All right.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.